Hello, Shapers. For today's episode of Coffee with Curators, we are delighted to have a guest from country of Ukraine. Ukraine has faced immense challenges in recent years. Almost a year ago, the country has invaded, leading a war that has claimed for too many Ukrainian lives, including innocent civilians and children. The conflict has resulted in the large refugee crisis of the 21st century and has caused millions of people to become internally displaced. Despite these profound difficulties, the Ukrainian people have remained strong and united in their efforts to overcome their challenges. At present, 18 million people in Ukraine requires humanitarian support, with 6 million internally displaced and facing repeated attacks that have left them without essential services like electricity, water, and heating. And as temperature drops below zero, the need for support with their basic necessities become increasingly urgent. Our today's guest raised voice of youth of Ukraine and shows their strong commitment for the democratic values in Ukraine on many international platforms, including World Economic Forum's the annual summit at Davos. It's my pleasure to welcome the curator of Kyiv Hub from Ukraine, Olga Bezverkha.
Great to meet you, and thank you for this invitation.
So, Olga, I will start with something about Ukraine. So could you share something about Ukraine, like their culture, best thing about Ukraine, people of Ukraine, and etc.?
Okay, so I think I will start with Kyiv. I'm not originally from here, but I live more than 10 years in Kyiv now. And I think that's an amazing city. And I fall in love from the first sight. And what's great about Kyiv is the diversity of everything that you can have here, the diversity of people with different backgrounds, different knowledges, different interests, but also cultural diversity, because many people from all of the regions around the country move here to pursue their career, their education, and overall the city is very vibrant, very dynamic, and I think that's one of the greatest cities for a young person who has their goals, ambitions, plans, and want to change the world, because there is a lot of networking, a lot of connections, a lot of power, and a lot of inspiration also in the city. About Ukraine in general, my mom is working in the ethnology sphere, so I was raised all around Ukrainian traditions. So we had the traditional clothes at home. We have the traditional pottery, like traditional glasses, traditional spoons. So I would say that I was fully into it since the time I remember myself. And also my mom was teaching me a few traditional Ukrainian arts. And what I see here and what's really inspiring is that with the start of the full-scale invasion, people started being more conscious about their culture. So now more and more people want to dress international clothes. More and more people want to wear national symbols. More and more people want to have some traditional things in their house. And we see this reborn interest for people's roots, for our Ukrainian culture. And we see this interest from people from other countries who try to understand better what's special about our nation, what makes us so brave in this war with Russia. So I think Ukraine is a nice place to be during the peaceful times. And me personally, I'm amazed how fast we started growing in the recent years. And of course, I was personally impressed by the resilience that our country and our citizens, including Shapers and other young people, have demonstrated with the start of the full-scale invasion.
Yeah, Ukraine is like one of the most popular destination among Indians also for the medical studies. So when the Russian invasion of Ukraine started, and what is the current condition of Ukraine?
So overall, the war has started in 2014, but the moment the world started paying more attention in Ukraine actually happened on February 24 in 2022. And the reason for that is that this morning I personally woke up at 5 a.m. because of the huge missiles attacks. It happened to the major cities, and Russian tribes started occupation from a few directions. So this was the time when there was no safe space in Ukraine. Danger was coming from different sides, from south, from north, from east. It was continuing growing. And that was the moment when the reality has changed for all of us, for Shapers in particular. So we had our projects focus on different areas. We have our interests, hobbies, official jobs. But in that moment, our life has changed because now each of us has their main job, their volunteering job, and it's like in parallel. So majority of people from community that I know, they started doing something to help Ukraine to win in this war. Some people are helping on the battlefield directly, so they are now military. Some of them are helping through the medical volunteering, but we also have very strong volunteering groups who are now located in relatively safer spaces of Ukraine, and they help with supplies, with education, and so on. So overall, everything has changed dramatically. On the beginning, in the end of February, I was forced to leave Kyiv because it was dangerous here. We didn't know for sure whether the city will be occupied or not. The cities that were like a bit outside of Kyiv, they were under occupation of Russians, and they committed horrific crimes that are still to be investigated. So overall, our life changed because we needed to seek for another place to live. Some of the Ukrainians, they started fleeing abroad, and many of them still stay in Europe because the situation is not safe, especially now. And these dynamics had like different things. So in addition to occupation, in autumn 2022, Russia started hard missile attacks to energy ecosystem. So before that, we have constant attacks, but they were not specifically focused on the energy. Nevertheless, there were many large attacks to civilian objects like just buildings, residential where people live, schools, kindergartens. So nobody could have a clue how people could be so cruel to destroy the place where people live, even hospitals. But in autumn, they also started attacking energy ecosystem, and that's why many people were left without electricity. That's something that you mentioned. And it's happening all around Ukraine now. I'm actually calling from the co-working. They have their special generator because now there is no light and no proper internet at my home, and it happens every day. So now I have internet for 8 hours. No, not internet, the electricity in general for 8 hours at home. And that's good because when the stronger attacks are happening, the electricity could be even for less hours, like for 3, 5, but sometimes the electricity disappears for a few days in a row. So we live absolutely in a different reality. And those people who started coming back to Ukraine in spring and in summer, because the situation seemed a bit more stable after our military forces, they occupied the part around like Kyiv region. But then they were forced to leave again, just like from the reasons of this hard missile attacks, but also from the electrical stability. So it's hard to continue the usual daily routines, but I'm amazed to see how businesses are changing their approaches and how they now live differently. So even a small coffee shop outside on the street, they will have their small independent generator. So people try to live their ordinary life in some ways to be able to have a coffee, to have some offline meetings, for example, like clubs, right? To help our economy to operate, to have cinemas open, to have bookstores open. So I think what's incredible in this situation is that in the beginning, when the war has started, Ukrainians, like many of them, not just left the country, but they started helping and building the volunteering support for those who are on the battlefield, to help buying, for example, life-proofing vests, helmets, and then medical. Also, this now continues is that despite of the war, many businesses are still operating, and it's challenging. It's super challenging to what's happening, and we sustain our economy, Ukraine will, but to have it on the fair terms, of course. By fair terms, I mean the occupation of the territory that was occupied before.
So as a youth, we have like a lot of dreams to achieve in our life. So as a Ukrainian, could you share us with your experience, how your life changed before and after this Russian invasion on Ukraine?
So I think the main one is that I mentioned that now we have like two kind of parallel lives. One is the life of, I don't know, whether entrepreneur or the professional life, right? And then we also have the volunteering life, the projects that all of us are doing to help Ukraine to win. I would say that Shapers in this case are different because Shapers would always have the volunteering work, something they would try to make better for community. But now our forces and our efforts, our dreams, they are more focused on the Ukrainian topic. Because it's impossible to bring the value to the community that we were aiming when we joined the Global Shapers movement without having the basic security, without seeing your fellow Ukrainians dying because of the missile attacks, seeing both children, young people, old people, like anybody. So anybody could be a victim of Ukraine Hub. So something that we are focusing right now is actually about helping Ukraine to win. And here I would mention about the project that actually was the core of cooperation for Global Shapers when the war has started, because that's not only the project of Kyiv Hub, but that's also the project where folks from Lviv Hub, this is a city in Western Ukraine, they were included. So it's called Support Ukraine Now. This was the movement that was helping people outside of Ukraine to learn how to help Ukraine within this first weeks of war, when the information was limited, but many people tried to help. And actually, one of the roots of this project was from the Global Shapers community, because on the first day, on the February 24, and then the next days, we were receiving many messages from Shapers, and it was super appreciative and heartwarming to see that people inside of the community are trying to help, and they are wondering how they could do it. But then we also understand that as a Shapers, we receive the same requests from people outside of the community, from our friends who live in different countries, but also from the random people we never met, but for example, who know some of our friends abroad and they want to be useful and they want to help us. So that's how the Support Ukraine Now has appeared. Now it's an ecosystem of the projects that are helping a community of Ukraine and international volunteers, but it appeared as an informational resource. And since that time, I will share some results we are proud of, is that we have over 2 million unique visits to our website. And at that moment, the website was a guide how to help Ukraine. So basically, we're collecting links to different resources, how people can donate for example, military support, how people can donate for medical support, for humanitarian support, but also various activities, how people can contribute locally. For example, go on a process, whether they are in Paris, Berlin, or any other city, right? How they can host Ukrainians, how they can help Ukrainians to be integrated in the community, and many other things. And then also through our platform, we have received more than 1 million donations for charities that were published through our website. So it was also like a small bridge that we're connecting Ukrainian NGOs who are constantly needing money with people who were interested and found our resource. And I remember the moment when we were in Zurich living from the annual meeting in 2022, and there was like a small booth about how to help Ukrainians. And I was very proud to see that on their Hangouts, they have the QR code of 2 organizations and resources they advise. And one of them was Support Ukraine Now. So without any efforts, they just found our resource and they considered it useful. But also through our platform, we have collected money for the medicines. It was $100,000 to provide to Ukrainian frontline. Also, we bought 187,000 bulletproof vests, and the fundraising was happening within the project. And 400 people had received mental support when the war was just beginning, and it was hard to consume what's happening and to live the ordinary life. So we have a special channel to connect people who need this kind of help. And also the team within this project has conducted the research. So basically, our engagement, our personal engagement of the Hub members, it was totally transformed on the kind of war stream. And all of us were engaged into initiatives like SUN, Support Ukraine Now, within our hubs. But also I know that like almost every member had something on their side. For example, at that moment, I was running like a small charitable foundation to help Ukrainians on the front line with the medical supplies, but also with the bulletproof vests, because like the country didn't have so many of them that were needed when Russia started full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And some of our other hub members that also had like mental health support projects. Some of them were engaged in the political activities and diplomacy. So everybody is doing something to help Ukraine to win. It's been almost a year, and the life is still the same way, and it will be happening like these two parallel streams, they will be happening until we win. And it's important because, you know, from this short time perspective, that the war is just like for 1 day or 2 days, or for example, months. Now we understand that that might be in the long run, but we are ready and we have this commitment. And I think it's super important. Talking about the timeline, when I woke up at 5 a.m. and I seen the war is happening, the first that I had was like denial and refusal. So I couldn't believe that it's really happening. I had some explosions, but when I was waking up, I just thought, I don't know, maybe there's something on the street. Not the war, of course, but I think for me, it required like a few weeks or even a month to fully understand what's happening. Because when I was leaving Kyiv, I just took things for 2-3 days. I just had a small backpack, and I was kind of confident I can come back within 2 or 3 days, but I spent more than months in another city. And I know that for many people, it's been the same. So this sustainability that I'm talking right now, this long-term commitment of running these initiatives, the understanding that the support from people from other countries is also always necessary until we win. That's the sustainable change that we had in our hub. And I think a few first months we were totally like focused on this initiative. So like every of us was breathing through Support Ukraine now, through other products, but now we kind of get back to our hub routines, having the meetings without discussing the project, but just talking to each other. Also not about talking how to help other hub members with evacuation, but just going a bit deeper. And I'm happy that finally, when we had this like last call of this year, we were able to talk a bit more about our plans, about our goals. And then like majority of us have two goals. So the first one, the most important, that of course to help Ukraine to win, and everybody is doing something different. But now it's good to see that people starting coming back to their own plans and goals. So despite of the fact that the war is happening, people continue being unstoppable. And now they dream big. They understand that some of the things might not change so fast, like with Ukraine and our victory, but we need to continue building the society and the world that we used to be. So that's why Global Shapers, it's so important for us.
Thanks, Ola. You have described very well. Recently there are a lot of new hubs are opened in Global Shapers community, and they don't know about the link or where they can support this support Ukraine movement. Can you share some links or some sources where they can support this initiative?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I would be happy to share with you a link to Support Ukraine Now project, and there are references to many organizations who receive donations for initiatives people will join. So I will be happy to help. And I'm happy that already many global shapers joined these activities, but also conducted their own.
So you had attended World Economic Forum's annual summit as a shaper last year, and I read in one of the news article, it took you to 2 days to reach Davos from your city. Can you share some experience about your experience of Davos last year's journey?
Mm-hmm. So I guess many shapers have a dream to join the annual meeting in Davos because it seems so special and it was like super desirable. So for me, the same, but I couldn't imagine the context that I will be attending the annual meeting. So at that time, it's been a bit more than 2 months and the war has started. And I would be honest, all of the thoughts, aspirations, plans, goals, everything was about helping my country to win the war and finally to be able to live the life that we used to have before February 24. So my participation here was symbolic and very like goal-oriented from this perspective, but also it had the sense of what's happening in my country, you know, and it was super unusual for me to leave the country. That was the first time since I left, since the war has started, the full-scale war has started. So I had this mixed feelings of, from one perspective, having this need to talk on behalf of young people in Ukraine, what they're facing, their achievements, but also the pain that they have because of the war. and at the same time to be far from my country, seeing the missile attacks all the time, knowing that some of people I know are hurt or killed. So it was indeed a mixed experience, but I was inspired and empowered by the support from the Ukraine that I've seen when I was attending the annual meeting. So this was one of the topics at the agenda. And to be honest, I felt a bit of relief because I've seen that there are so many supporters who are not forgetting this question, for whom this issue and help to Ukraine is one of the priorities on their agenda, not only personal agenda, but also national one. But getting aside from it, I think that annual meeting is the special for everybody. So in case you haven't applied there yet, I encourage all of you to do. But before applying, to make the most of your experience, I would suggest to think about your goal. So this is not just a great place to be, but there should be something behind that. What's important for you? What are your values? What are your plans and professional and personal, like volunteering aspirations? So think well about it. What are you trying to achieve? What's your biggest dream? If you dream, but of course you do because you're shapers, right? If you dream to make a world a better place, how would you like to do it? Through education, through healthcare, through peace building, or something else? So be more precise, think big, choose one or maybe many goals. What are you trying to achieve in a few years? And then have very specific about the actions that will bring you to your large goal. And only then, when you have this all settled, why are you going there? Having this particular purpose and understanding of the instrument that you're missing, I think this would be your most successful application, A, and B, you will get the most out of it. Because there was about many things. First of all, this is, of course, the inspiration. So when I talk to people, I just couldn't stop being amazed of how people are smart or how people are gifted, talented, but of course also about their dreams and goals. So it was super powerful to be around people who are not just talking about their wish to have a better place, to make the world a better place, but who are committed, right? And who are doing something every day to get to this goal, to make the world a better place. So for me, it was a strong empowerment. I was left with the feeling that I'm not doing enough because people are so great and they have so many initiatives, but still it was super motivating. So when I was living in Davos, I was thinking, okay, there are 200 more things that I could do. And what was also powerful, this is the second point, knowing that you have kind of a partner, a supporter, a body for each of these activities, right? So living in Davos, I knew that if I would like to pursue this healthcare project, now I have 3, 4, 5 great people who are also interested in it. So that's like about having an extra network and resources to build it. So I think those were the most powerful things. But third is the recognition of the community in general. So I always knew that global shapers are special people, super talented and smart. But when I met them personally, I was like, okay, wow. So it's actually much stronger than I saw. And something that we discussed within like the Shapers 50, that year it was Shapers 55. We just realized that kind of the bar was higher than we thought for each of us, for our achievements. And that's super great because I've seen that the community is much more powerful. I thought it's powerful, but it's much more than that. And what's great that in addition to finding like like-minded people, connection, power to do something, you also find the people you can relate to, and then you feel that together you can do much more than you are doing. So basically it was always about this community, but that was especially the point that I felt it. And I thought, if it's possible to give a short demo to people who are thinking about joining the community, how the community is working, how it's like to be at Davos, there would be much more people interested to join. So I regret that I cannot share some memories of it, but overall it was very inspiring experience. And again, using this opportunity, I can encourage you to apply for it, but of course, to be mindful about your goals and plans, because the forum creates a great platform to advance your goals, but you need to be super clear and specific about what you need. Otherwise, it might just be like the missed actions.
So when you meet the powerful leaders at the forum's platform, and how was their response when you shared about the current condition in Ukraine that you have seen on the ground?
So I think like there was overall the general awareness of what's happening because there was a lot of attention paid to Ukraine at that time. But some of the things might be still surprising to them, like understanding that despite of the war in Kyiv, the coffee shops are operating. So you can buy, I don't know, latte macchiato or something else, even under the missile attacks, that people continue their job. So many of businesses are still open. For some people, it was revealing because I just noticed that some people have a perception that countries were like where nothing is operating. So like, for example, my trip took so long because the planes are not flying in Ukraine, only military. And unfortunately, many of those military planes are the planes that are attacking Ukraine, the Russians ones, right? So I would need to take the railway trip, and then I was switching to bus and so on. So it took many hours. But overall, there were so many things operating in Ukraine, which made people amazed. So I can even go to the gym. Sometimes my training would be rescheduled or canceled because of the hard missile attacks. And you can see people being upset about it. So what amazed me, that just like the general understanding when you talk to people and say, okay, our country is over the war, but people can be upset because the work meeting is canceled or something else is happening and they cannot buy their coffee or I know some food in the shop. That was a surprise for them because they didn't expect that people continue living their life and the business is so strong in operations. But I think also what we faced is that some understandings of people are not specifically working in the humanitarian support is that they didn't know that so many people are suffering, that so people are hurt of the civilians, right? Not connected with the war in any way, so they are not militaries participating, and that the demand for help is so huge and so strange. I still have like online meetings, and sometimes if I'm not in co-working, my internet could collapse, and I'm just like reconnecting, saying, I'm so sorry, the connection has missed because we had a missile attack and it was not so far of us, so electricity was down. That's still something that amazes people. So I've seen different attitudes. People have the general perception, but they were amazed by some things, how we are trying to keep the things together. And I think the most impressive for me was the way we were dealing with it. So that we're just not thinking about ourselves, but everybody of us is contributing to make things rolling. And for some of the world leaders, it was amazing that in time of a huge danger, young people are like focusing on resilience, rebuilding, and that we are so active. And I think one of this aspects is that amount of money we are donating. So it's not about NGOs or foundations who are donating, but it's people who donate from their salaries, from their, for example, like tutorship fees and so on. So just like ordinary people giving away their savings to help somebody at the front line to get a bulletproof vest or helmet, or just to buy some medical suppliers. So I think that's what amazed them. And also, I think communication with Ukrainian shapers gave them a bit wider perspective of how they could be useful. So basically, it doesn't matter what industry they are working. They are not necessarily should be in the like military industry or healthcare to help, even though they might be musicians, artists, painters, whatever. They also can have their own stream to help us with our resilience, but also they also have more activities to protest against the occupation again and to support democratic values that we are now protecting for almost a year, right? So I think we just widened the idea of how they could be useful, and we have created this basis for building more ties and connections and more partnerships between people outside of Ukraine and inside.
Salute to the spirit of the Ukrainian people, how they are dealing with this adverse condition. So at last, Ola, can you share some insights from your experience as a global shaper so that it could be helpful for the new shapers who are joining us currently and in future?
Mm-hmm. So I'm shapers for 3 years already, but I found out about community 5 years ago. So if somebody will be watching it, they are not in shapers yet, I urge them 2 years is too long to make a decision to join because there are so many great things you're missing. When you're a shaper, I think the most important is to get a good onboarding, initiating questions and processes by yourself. So there are so many opportunities within the community. So it's important to ask for a match with people inside of the community if you don't know them yet, to research the alumni, for example. Maybe they will be of help, can give you a better perspective of how the hub was operating before, what are the opportunities, what are the achievements that they actually reached through the Global Shapers Network. So to be curious and to try to get the most out of it. There is one mistake I noticed through some of the shapers, that they come to the community, they know that they have pretty much a lot of time, like for example, till 30 now. In the past, it was till 32, or this like 5 years period when you consider an active shaper. So what they do, they come, they're active for the first months, they meet people, they talk to them, and then they just disappear because then they have a lot of time ahead. So don't use this approach because some of the activities, they're actually age limiting, right? So I know a few people who were like getting closer to the alumni, and they were like, oh no, I haven't been a curator yet, or I haven't applied for Davos, so don't do this. Jump in right away. And I think that the best you can do to have a great experience as global shapers is to be committed and to consider people you're working with as a value itself. We had this talk after visiting the annual meeting. There were so many amazing world leaders who actually do a lot of change, who have the strong values and the strong capacity to change the world. But what many of us were amazed is that the global shapers community, the other shapers. So every shaper was a universe full of ideas, full of inspirations, full of support, and full of trends. So I encourage you, when joining the hub as a newbie, be sure to learn who are the people around you, what's interesting about them, when you can bring to their life and when they bring to yours, because I'm pretty sure that talking to at least half of the members of the hub, some of your opinions will change, and this will make you not only a better person, but a stronger one for sure.
So we have 2-3 shapers on the. Do you have any questions?
Yes, the very first one is regarding the efforts done during the wartime. Like, it's remarkable to put all the effort despite being the hardship. So I was just wondering on how were you able to manage all those things, because those learnings will be much helpful for other hubs who are facing similar kind of situations in their country, let it be climate, due to climate action or due to political crisis, etc. So I was just wondering how you were able to implement, or how you were able to ensure that everything is going fine, supervising or managing or connecting the dots, etc. That's first thing. And second thing is regarding the mistrust occurring in youth these days because of the international events or other things happening worldwide. I did come across your video on the top link regarding the topic youth mistrust, but I still feel like if we have some role to play in it, because it's a major topic which has many diverse factors, let it be diplomacy or government relations or everything so on. So it's a very huge topic. So I was just wondering on how we as a shaper can contribute to it, because it's something alarmingly increasing in this current trade. So these are my two questions.
I think when the full-scale war has started, we just were in the situation where we can do it any other way, right? So it's not that we had at the beginning the full well-structured approach how to deal with it, and that it was like super organized. I just think like at the moment when the full-scale invasion has started, it was like frightening, but then this frightening moment, it was short and it was transformed super fast into doing the best you could, and just trying to be the most efficient you can. So basically that was it. I think from this perspective, we have used the strong sides of our hub. So like we had people working in the communications, people who have background in startups, people who were doing community building, marketing, PR. So basically those people were created like the basis of our team. And then using this experience, we try to think of how we could be the most efficient. And that's how we found this feed for the communication platform as it was at the beginning, right? Because it's transforming. So like overall, we just thought about our strengths and we were super quick to switch from frustration, anger, fear to doing something that we could do. overall, we have discussed this topic because we think that the way that not only global shapers in Ukraine, but the way Ukrainian youth is addressing the war, that's unique by itself. That's something that was, I think I was proud of when I was talking in Davos, was also about this mobility of Ukrainian young people. So they just not like left the country or were left to suffer, to be angry, to be upset, just started coordinating with each other. So I think like overall the volunteering movement, this kind of complicated supply chains that we have developed within pretty short time. Like, for example, I remember the first weeks I was learning what are the bulletproof vests that are needed for the battlefield, how to buy them, what are the certifications, how do you bring it, finding the suppliers, trying to manage like really short delivery with more than 10 people involved into the team. That's like something was kind of extraordinary at that time. So like, I think overall, it's definitely need to be structured. Part of it, it's already done. And as you mentioned, like Sikander told about it. So we are super willing to share this experience because we think that like some communication and PR activities and awareness activities, they are super important so people can deal with any kind of conflict. And also, I'm proud to say that we have the newcomer to our community. He used to work on the initiative to help Ukraine to fundraise, like with blockchain, but then he was helping our countries who are facing diseases. So basically, some of the things that we have developed for the Ukrainian youth movement, they are scalable, then could be used to different jurisdictions. And some of the projects that we are working on at the moment, they are focused on Ukraine. Like, for example, we had a feed project within the Support Ukrainian Now project ecosystem. And the idea was to match Ukrainian business with a similar business in other country, for example, barbershop in Ukraine with barbershop in India, so they can communicate, they can kind of be like the brotherhood businesses. And for example, at this moment, they could help Ukraine, collect some donations for Ukrainian business. But then, for example, we can do the same type of support, or their customers can come to Ukraine to be served for free, for example. But this was Ukrainian-centric, right? We understand that while we are going through the war, it's hard for us to have the external focus, but what we are willing to do is to expand the geography of some of the projects we are doing, right? So for example, then we would love to invite, for example, businesses from Greece, from US, from Argentina, and to kind of expand the network. So I think that's one of the things that also could be done for cooperation, not only sharing this kind of emergency plans and execution, how it was done in our case, but also beyond the horizons of the projects we are doing now. And I would love, as soon as the war is over, to share these initiatives and to make them more global. And also, what I see, there are some projects that we have before the war, but to be honest, they will have absolutely different contexts, right? So before that, for us, Brain Drain was to attract people who are studying abroad. So they would have some working experience in Ukraine during their summer breaks, for those who study in college in US, and then to create for them the stronger ties with Ukraine, so they would come back once they graduate. Now we see that there is a much bigger problem because millions of Ukrainians has fled abroad. Some of them kind of lived in this temporary condition, so they were not, for example, finding the permanent apartments for some months because they were waiting for the war to be over within months or two, as I did, right? But then some of them started renting apartments, getting new jobs in other countries. So for us, it would be a huge challenge. And then the Brain Drain will be in a different format. We want people who used to live in Ukraine, who love living in Ukraine and who want to be back, but they still have this post-war effect, to come back and to bring our talents back home. So all of them would work to develop the country. And from this perspective, it would be also great not to only share the experience of our hub, how we dealt with the war at the beginning, but also to get an experience of other hubs who had this issue, but who have overcome this challenge, right? So they would help us to rebuild Ukraine through different industries using their experience. So I think overall, what we have, one of the strongest parts is international cooperation that we can make in global shapers. And I hope that these processes will make us cooperating even tighter. But also, I think I really want to admit that I'm super proud of the community, of the support that we got when we were at the international meetings in Davos, but also in Geneva, the curatorship activities, because I've seen on how many people are willing to help, but also with some of those we have discussed on how our experience can be used for their challenges they are facing, especially from the perspective of humanitarian support, volunteering movement in general, civil engagement, and so on.
That was an elaborate explanation. Thank you, Olga.
The missiles and all the things on the news channels, but the way people are coordinating with each other and helping each other to deal with such adverse condition in Ukraine is truly inspirational for not only shapers but all the humanity across the world.
I think, one of the moments that it was person to person. So when people are donating, they're just not donating to large funds, but they often prefer small fundraising campaigns because they can see the name of the person. They know that it's somebody's brother, that they will have it, that that's about protecting their life. And there are also a lot of stories saying like, the person I know was saved due to the bulletproof vest that you helped me to fundraise for, right? So that's kind of the model of fundraising of personal support. The same was for people who were like, whose houses were destroyed. And I think that's a lot about personalization. So, in the war, there is this tendency of having victims as a no-name victims. And I think that we have a special initiative in Ukraine called Memorial. So they are writing about every victim of the war, like the person who were killed by Russia, about militaries, about civilians, about adult people, about small children, like to create more memory. And I think this personal context, it kind of make this movement more powerful as well.
I hope Ukraine will win soon in the near future. It will be like good for the world also, because the type of the things that like food shortage and all the things happening due to this war and this condition, it is like it will be a bit of relief for the world also. I hope Ukraine will win soon.
Thank you very much. Now we have jokes. Now we have jokes. Before, people would say that they are keeping something special, like from food or presents for New Year. Now we say that don't take this, like, for example, bottle. This is for a Victory Day. So I hope we will have a few large celebration. But then I hope that some of you would be able to visit Ukraine when it's safe for all of you, of course. And I would be happy to introduce it to you. So you have my invitation.
So nice of you. Thank you so much, Ola, for joining us today and sharing your insights and experience. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And thank you so much for being here and support Ukraine.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your support, and it was my pleasure talking to you. If you're interested to learn more about the project that the Kyiv Hub is organizing, I would love to talk to you in person and share about some ways you can join the initiatives to support Ukraine. Thank you for the invitation.